Parents and sister mistreated me and kicked me out of their house. I slept in a tent and lived like a dog, working through from jobs to jobs. Now I have a house, they are crawling back. Well, honey, pull up a chair and let me tell you about the saddest story that ever unfolded. I've seen families come and go, watched babies grow into adults, witnessed more drama than those soap operas I pretend not to watch. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened to the Thompson boy. Now, before I get into the meat of it all, let me paint you a picture. The Thompsons lived in that shabby little ranch house at the end of the street. You know, the one with the peeling yellow paint and the mailbox that's been crooked since 2012? Harold and Linda Thompson and their twins, Marcus and Madison. Born on the same day, 28 years ago now, but Lord have mercy, you'd never know they shared a womb. I remember when Linda Thompson brought those babies home from the hospital. She was all smiles for Madison, cooing and carrying on, showing her off to anyone who'd look. But Marcus? That poor boy might as well have been invisible. Even then, standing on my porch with my coffee, I see everything from that porch. Mind you, I could tell something wasn't right about how they treated that boy. Let me tell you, growing up next door to the Thompsons was like having a front row seat to a slow-motion tragedy. Madison, pretty little thing with her mama's blonde hair, had everything a child could want. New dresses every Easter, birthday parties with bounce houses, the works. Marcus? That boy wore hand-me-downs from the church donation box. I know because I recognized my own grandson's old jacket on him one winter. The grandfather, Eugene Thompson, now there was a good man, used to sit with Marcus on the front steps, teaching him about cars and tools. Eugene owned the auto shop downtown before he retired. He'd bring Marcus little toy cars and show him how engines worked. It was the only time I'd see that boy smile. Mrs. Mel, Eugene told me once over the fence, that boy's got potential. Smart as a whip. It's a crying shame how they treat him. I agreed, but what could we do? Call child services because a boy didn't get new toys? They fed him, clothed him, barely, sent him to school. On paper, nothing illegal was happening. Just a slow, soul-crushing favoritism that was breaking that child down day by day. When Eugene passed, Lord rest his soul, Marcus was 13. I'll never forget that funeral. The boy stood there, tears streaming down his face, while his parents comforted Madison, who was upset she had to wear a black dress instead of her new pink one. After the service, I found Marcus sitting alone by Eugene's grave. He was the only one who loved me, Mrs. Mel, he said, and honey, my heart just shattered. Now, here's where the story takes a turn that still makes my blood boil. When the twins turned 16, Madison got herself in trouble with some 19-year-old dropout named Kyle Brennan. Kid was trouble from the jump, greasy hair, pants hanging off his behind, couldn't hold a job if it came with handles. But Madison was in love, and next thing you know, she's expecting. The Thompsons did what any respectable family would do in their minds. They got those kids married and moved Kyle right into the house. But here's the kicker. They kicked Marcus out to make room. I was pruning my roses when I heard the commotion. Harold Thompson dragging a moldy old tent from their garage while Marcus stood there, looking like someone had just pulled his heart out through his throat. "Dad, please," I heard him say. "I'll sleep on the couch. I'll sleep on the floor. Just don't make me live outside." "No room," Harold grunted. "Your sister needs privacy now she's married. You're a young man, you'll figure it out." I nearly pruned my finger off. I was so shocked. They were really going to make that boy sleep in a tent in the backyard like some kind of animal. That first night, there was a terrible storm. I couldn't sleep, thinking about that poor child out there. Around midnight, I saw him knocking on their back door, soaking wet and shivering. Harold opened the window and yelled. I heard every word through my bedroom window. "You disturb me again, boy, and I'll give you something to really cry about." I almost marched over there myself, but my husband Earl, God rest him too, held me back. "Mel, you can't fight everyone's battles," he said. But I should have. Lord knows I should have. The tent situation lasted about 2 weeks before Marcus just disappeared. I didn't see him leave, but one morning the tent was empty, his few belongings gone. The Thompsons didn't even report him missing. When I casually asked Linda about it at the grocery store, she just shrugged. He found somewhere else to freeload, I suppose, she said, examining cantaloupes like we weren't talking about her son. I found out later, through my network of concerned citizens, what Earl used to call my gossip circle, that Marcus had found work with the Kowalskis, that Polish couple who ran the bakery on 5th Street. They let him live in their back storage room in exchange for help. Mrs. Kowalski told me he was the hardest worker they'd ever had. That boy would scrub floors until they shined, she said. Never complained, always polite. Broke my heart when he told me why he couldn't live at home anymore. For 12 years, I lost track of Marcus Thompson. I'd hear things through the grapevine. He'd gotten work at the Ford plant, was taking night classes, had worked his way up to supervisor. Meanwhile, Madison had pumped out 3 more kids with that useless Kyle, who spent his days playing video games and his nights drinking at Murphy's bar. The Thompsons aged poorly during those years. Harold's drinking got worse. I could hear the bottles clinking in their recycling every Tuesday, and Linda developed that pinched look women get when they realize they've backed the wrong horse. They were still renting that same shabby house, now even shabbier with 4 grandkids tearing through it. Then, about 2 weeks ago, something interesting happened. You know the Morrison place over on Oak Street? Beautiful 3-bedroom colonial with the wraparound porch? Well, Ted Morrison had to sell quick, divorce settlement. Very messy, but that's another story for another day. The new owner moved in at night, so none of us got a good look at him. But oh honey, when I saw who stepped out of that house the next morning, I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Marcus Thompson, looking like $1 million in a supervisor's uniform, climbing into a Toyota Tacoma that still had the dealer plates on it. Now, I need to tell you about Peggy Chin. She lives across from the Thompsons and is connected to everyone through that Facebook thing. She's the one who posted pictures of the Morrison house with the caption, "Gorgeous home, new neighbor alert." I have a theory that's how the Thompsons found out where Marcus was living. Because not 3 days after he moved in, I was walking my Pomeranian, Mr. Whiskers. Don't judge the name. My granddaughter picked it, past Marcus's new house when I saw a familiar beat-up sedan parked outside. I'm not proud of it, but I ducked behind the Hendersons' hedge to watch. The whole Thompson clan was at Marcus's door. Harold, Linda, Madison, pregnant again, Lord help us, Kyle, and 3 kids who looked like they'd been raised by wolves. Marcus opened the door, and I swear I saw him age 5 years in 5 seconds. But he let them in, polite as always. That boy never could be rude, even to those who deserved it. About an hour later, I heard shouting. Real shouting, the kind that makes Mr. Whiskers whimper. I was just considering whether to call the police when the Thompsons came storming out. Madison was screeching like a banshee. It's not fair. You have 3 bedrooms and you're just one person. We're family. Family. Marcus stood in his doorway, calm but firm. The same family that made me live in a tent? That family. You owe me. Madison screamed. You wouldn't even exist without me. That's when I knew she'd been fed the same poison her parents had been brewing for years. The idea that Marcus owed his life to his twin, that he was just an unwanted addition to their real prize. Harold tried to get tough, puffing up his chest. You listen here, boy. A man takes care of his family. A man? Marcus's voice was steady. A man doesn't make his 16-year-old son sleep with rats while his daughter's deadbeat husband takes his bed. They left, but I knew it wasn't over. People like the Thompsons, they don't give up when they smell money. A week passed. Marcus had installed security cameras. Smart boy. He'd also made friends with old Mr. Patterson next door, who spent his retirement years sitting on his porch, watching the neighborhood like a hawk. It was Mr. Patterson who called Marcus when he saw Madison and Kyle trying to jimmy the back window of Marcus's house in broad daylight. The absolute gall of it. They'd broken in, moved their stuff into the master bedroom, and were acting like they owned the place when Marcus got home. I heard the commotion from my yard. Marcus calling the police, Madison shrieking about family rights, Kyle trying to act tough until Marcus laid him out with one punch. But here's where it gets bad. Madison's oldest boy, Trevor, 14 and already trouble, hit Marcus with a bottle. Split his head open, blood everywhere. The police took them all away, but not before the Thompsons showed up, trying to spin some story about a misunderstanding. Mr. Patterson set them straight, bless him. I saw everything, he said. They broke in like common thieves. After the break-in, Marcus pressed charges. The whole neighborhood was talking about it. Madison and Kyle got community service and hefty fines they couldn't pay. The boy went to juvenile detention for a week. You'd think that would be the end of it, but no. Yesterday, and this is where I have to take a breath because it still upsets me. Yesterday, Harold and Linda showed up at Marcus's door again. I was repotting my petunias and could hear everything. They wanted to move in with Marcus. Said they'd give their rental house to Madison, and as the responsible son, he should take them in. The mental gymnastics these people did would win Olympic gold. Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. You threw out your child, he said. Your 16-year-old son. You made me sleep in a tent in winter. And now you want my hospitality. We're your parents. Linda wailed. No, Marcus said. Eugene was my parent. The Kowalskis were my parents. Anyone who showed me a grain of kindness was more parent to me than you ever were. He shut the door in their faces. They stood there for 20 minutes, but he never opened it again. Now, here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Remember I mentioned Harold's drinking? Well, it had gotten worse over the years. Much worse. 2 nights after Marcus rejected them, Harold went on a bender at Murphy's. Kyle was with him, birds of a feather and all that. According to Tom Murphy, the owner, Harold spent the whole night ranting about ungrateful children and how Marcus had stolen the life that should have been Madison's. They left the bar at 2 a.m., Harold driving despite being 3 sheets to the wind. Kyle was no better. They were heading home when Harold, in his drunken state, decided they needed to teach that boy a lesson. But here's the thing about drunk driving. It doesn't care about your plans. Harold ran a red light at the intersection of Maple and 3rd. Hit a concrete barrier head-on. Kyle wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Went through the windshield. Harold, well, the steering column did its damage. They were both gone before the ambulance arrived. The police found Harold's phone in the wreckage. His last text, half written to Madison, going to make him pay for disrespecting. The funeral was yesterday. Marcus paid for everything. The boy always did have more grace than sense. Madison showed up in a black dress that had seen better days. Her 3 kids, 4, now that Trevor was out of juvie, looking shell-shocked. Linda seemed to have aged 20 years overnight. Marcus gave a eulogy that had everyone in tears. He talked about forgiveness, about breaking cycles, about how hatred and resentment had poisoned his family for too long. He announced he was setting up a trust fund for Madison's kids' education because they deserve better than what we got. Madison couldn't even look at him. After the service, I found Marcus standing by Eugene's grave, just like he had 15 years earlier. I tried to hate them, Mrs. Mel, he said. But hate is what killed them. Hate and jealousy and alcohol. I won't let it kill me too. It's been a week since the funeral. Marcus still lives in his house on Oak Street. He's installed a bench in Eugene's memory at the local park. Madison and Linda moved into a small apartment. Turns out Harold had been hiding bills, and they lost the rental house. I see Madison sometimes at the grocery store. She looks hollow, like she's finally understanding what she lost, what she threw away for a narrative her parents fed her. Her oldest boy, Trevor, has been in and out of trouble since his father died. The cycle continues, despite Marcus's best efforts. As for Linda Thompson, she spends her days sitting by her window, staring at nothing. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lives in their building, says she sometimes hears Linda crying and saying Eugene's name, like she's apologizing to a ghost. Marcus? He's doing all right. Started dating a nice girl from his work, Jasmine, I think her name is. They came to my 4th of July barbecue. He seemed lighter, like a weight he'd carried for 28 years had finally been lifted. But sometimes, when I see him in his driveway, washing that truck of his or mowing his lawn, I catch him looking toward the end of Maple Street, where that shabby yellow house stands empty now. And I wonder if he's thinking about the tent in the backyard, or the grandfather who loved him, or the family that could have been if only they'd had room in their hearts for one more. But wait, honey, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's more to this story, parts 1 didn't mention because they still haunt me. See, between the funeral and today, Things got even darker for what was left of the Thompson family. About 3 weeks after Harold and Kyle died, Madison showed up at Marcus's door at 2 a.m. I know because Mr. Whisker's bladder isn't what it used to be, and I was out in my robe when I saw her stumbling up his driveway. She was drunk, first time I'd ever seen her like that. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I suppose. She was banging on his door, screaming, "You killed them. You killed my daddy. You killed my husband." Marcus came out in his pajamas, tried to calm her down. But Madison had lost it completely. She pulled out a kitchen knife, Lord have mercy, an actual knife, and lunged at him. Thank God Marcus had those reflexes from working at the plant. He dodged, grabbed her wrist, and the knife went flying into his bushes. Madison collapsed on his porch, sobbing and beating her fists on the concrete until they bled. "Why couldn't you just give us the house?" she wailed. "Why couldn't you just disappear like you were supposed to?" The police came again. But Marcus, bless his heart, refused to press charges. Told them his sister was grieving and not in her right mind. They took her to the hospital for a psychiatric hold instead. While Madison was in the hospital, Linda Thompson came to see me. First time in all these years she'd ever stepped foot on my porch. She looked like a ghost, thin, pale, her hands shaking like autumn leaves. "Mel," she said, using my first name like we were friends. "I need to tell someone before I lose my mind." I made her tea, I'm not heartless, and she told me things that made my blood run cold. Turns out, Harold and Linda never wanted twins. They'd been trying for years for a baby, and when the ultrasound showed twins, the doctor made a mistake. Told them it was 2 girls. They'd decorated the nursery in pink, picked out names, Madison and Mackenzie. They told everyone they were having twin girls. When Marcus came out a boy, Harold lost it right there in the delivery room. Accused Linda of cheating, said the boy couldn't be his.
No ads,
the nurses
no
had
ads,
to restrain
no
him.
ads.
DNA
King Shot
test
brings
proved
you
Marcus
endless
was his,
fun without
but
any
Harold
breaks.
never forgave
It's
that
totally
baby for
free.
not being Mackenzie.
Jump into
We
awesome
told
tower
Madison
defense
from the
action.
time she
Play
could
round
understand.
after round to your
Linda
heart's
whispered
content
that
and
she
feel
was
the
supposed
thrill
to have a
every time
sister.
you win.
That Marcus
Download
took her
now
sister's
and
place.
enjoy hours
God
of
help
pure
us.
gaming joy.
We made our daughter believe her twin brother stole her real twin's life. I sat there, my tea going cold, unable to speak. The cruelty of it, the psychological torture they'd inflicted on both those children, it was beyond comprehension. Eugene knew, Linda continued. He tried to tell us we were damaging both kids, but Harold
King
wouldn't
Shot
hear
brings
him.
you endless
Said the boy
fun
needed to know
without
his
any
place.
breaks. It's
Here's something
totally
that'll
free.
really bake your
Jump
noodles.
into awesome
Remember
tower
how
defense
Marcus
action.
disappeared at
Play
16?
round after round to your heart's
Linda's
content
confession
and feel
made
the
me
thrill
remember something
every
odd.
time you win.
My niece Janet
Download
works
now
for Child
and enjoy
Services
hours of
Convenient,
pure
right?
gaming joy.
And years ago, she'd mentioned a case that broke her heart. A 16-year-old boy who'd been sleeping in a tent refused to name his parents, just kept saying he was better off outside. I called Janet after Linda left. Took some convincing, but she finally told me what I'd suspected. It was Marcus. He'd been picked up by police 3 times for sleeping rough before he found the bakery job. Each time, he refused to go home or press charges. We tried to place him in foster care, Janet said, but he aged out before we could find a family. Kid was determined to make it on his own. Never seen anything like it. But here's the kicker. There was a family that wanted him. The Kowalskis had filed paperwork to become his legal guardians. They wanted to adopt him, give him their name, make him their heir. But it required parental consent, and when the social worker approached the Thompsons, Harold threatened to sue. Said they'd never abandoned their son, that he was a runaway making up stories. Made enough noise that the Kowalskis backed off, afraid of legal trouble. Marcus never knew. He never knew that someone wanted him, really wanted him, and his parents blocked it out of pure spite. Remember Madison's oldest boy, Trevor? The one who hit Marcus with the bottle? Well, that juvenile detention stint was just the beginning. Without Kyle's influence, and I use that term loosely, Trevor went completely off the rails. 2 months after his father's death, Trevor broke into Marcus's house again, this time alone. Marcus wasn't home, but his new security system caught everything. The boy didn't take anything, he just destroyed. Smashed every picture, broke every dish, spray-painted murderer on the walls. But here's what really broke my heart. The cameras caught him in Marcus's spare room, the one Marcus had set up as an office. Trevor found a box of photos, all of Eugene and young Marcus working on cars together. The boy sat there for 20 minutes, looking at those pictures and crying. When the police found him, he was still there, holding a photo of Marcus and Eugene at Christmas. He had a grandpa who loved him, Trevor told the officers. We never had nobody. This time, Marcus did press charges, not out of anger, but because the judge said it was the only way to get Trevor court-mandated therapy. That boy needed help before he ended up like his father. Now, you'd think the story couldn't get worse, but honey, you'd be wrong. About 2 months after the funeral, an insurance investigator showed up on Maple Street. Turns out, Harold had taken out a life insurance policy on Marcus when he turned 18. Forged the boy's signature and everything. Been paying premiums for 10 years. The beneficiary? Madison. The investigator was looking into whether Harold's death was really an accident. See, the text message wasn't the only thing they found in that car. There was also a printed-out copy of Marcus's deed to his house and a half-written will leaving everything to Madison in case of unexpected tragedy. The implication was clear. Harold hadn't just been planning to confront Marcus that night. The insurance company suspected he'd been planning something much darker. When Marcus found out about the insurance policy, he went quiet. Real quiet. Didn't leave his house for 3 days. When he finally emerged, he'd aged years. The weight of realizing your father had been planning your death. I can't even imagine. Madison got out of the psychiatric hospital after 72 hours, but she wasn't the same. The spark of entitlement in her eyes had been replaced by something hollow and desperate. She'd lost her kids temporarily. They were placed with Linda while the state investigated her fitness as a mother. One night, about 3 months after Harold's death, I woke to the smell of smoke. Madison had gone back to the old yellow house, still empty, still technically in Harold's name, and set it on fire. She didn't try to run, just sat on the front lawn, watching it burn. When the firefighters arrived, she was humming a lullaby and holding a melted toy, one of those little cars Eugene used to give Marcus. I'm burning the ghosts, she told them. All the ghosts Daddy put in the walls. They took her away in an ambulance. The psychiatric hold was longer this time, involuntary commitment. She'd had a complete break with reality, the doctor said. Started believing she really did have a twin sister named Mackenzie who lived in the walls of the house, whispering about the boy who stole her life. With Madison institutionalized and her grandchildren in foster care, she couldn't pass the home inspection. Linda Thompson withered like a flower and dropped. She'd call me sometimes at odd hours, confused, thinking I was Eugene's wife. Tell Eugene I'm sorry, she'd say. Tell him he was right about the boy. We should have loved the boy. The last time I saw Linda alive was at the grocery store. She was standing in the baby food aisle, holding a jar of mashed peas and crying. When I approached her, she looked right through me. I need to feed Marcus, she said. He's hungry. He's been in that tent all night and he's hungry. I called her an ambulance. The paramedics said she'd had a stroke, a series of small ones, actually, that had been slowly destroying her mind. She died 2 days later in the hospital, calling for a baby that hadn't existed for 28 years. Marcus paid for her funeral too. Only 5 people attended: Marcus, me, Mr. Patterson, and 2 nurses from the hospital. Madison couldn't come. She was still institutionalized. The grandchildren didn't even know their grandmother had died. Here's where the story takes another heartbreaking turn. With both parents dead, Madison institutionalized, and Linda gone, Madison's 4 children were scattered to the wind. Trevor, already in the juvenile system, was placed in a group home for troubled teens. The younger 3 were split up among different foster families. The system couldn't find anyone willing to take all 3. Marcus tried, God bless him, he tried to get custody. But his single status, work schedule, and the trauma Trevor had inflicted made the courts hesitant. Instead, they allowed him supervised visits. I went with him once to see the youngest, little Amy, who was only 4. She didn't remember him as the uncle her mother had taught her to hate. She just knew he was the man who brought her coloring books and crayons. "Are you my daddy now?" she asked him, and I saw Marcus's heart break clean in two. "No, sweetheart," he said. "But I'm your uncle, and I'll always be here for you." The foster mother later told me that Amy cried for hours after he left, begging to go with the nice man who smells like cookies Marcus had taken to carrying treats from the Kowalski bakery. Remember I mentioned the Kowalskis earlier? Well, those beautiful souls had one more part to play in this tragedy. When old Mr. Kowalski was diagnosed with cancer, he called Marcus to the hospital. "You were the son we never had," he told Marcus. "We wanted to make it official, but your father." He passed away 2 weeks later, but not before changing his will. He left Marcus everything: the bakery, their savings, and a letter that destroyed what was left of Marcus's composure. In the letter, Mr. Kowalski detailed how they'd tried to adopt Marcus, how they'd hired a lawyer, prepared a room for him above the bakery, how Harold had threatened to destroy their business, to have them deported. They were legal citizens, but Harold didn't care about facts. How they'd watched Marcus struggle for years, wanting to help but afraid of making things worse. "We failed you," the letter said. "We let fear stop us from fighting for you. But you were always our son in our hearts." Marcus used the inheritance to set up education funds for all 4 of Madison's children and to donate to the local youth shelter. He kept the bakery running, hired kids aging out of foster care, gave them the chance he'd fought so hard to create for himself. From the psychiatric facility, Madison began writing letters. Not to Marcus. She couldn't bear to face what she'd done. She wrote to me instead, pages and pages of rambling apologies and memories. In one letter, she admitted something that chilled me to the bone. When they were 8, she'd overheard Eugene telling Harold that he was changing his will to leave everything to Marcus. That night, she'd put rat poison in Eugene's coffee. Not enough to kill him. She didn't know how much that would take, but enough to make him sick. "I wanted him to stop loving Marcus," she wrote. "I wanted him to love me instead. But he just got sicker and sicker until he died. I killed the only person who ever really loved my brother. I killed him because I was jealous of that love." She'd carried that secret for 20 years. The guilt had eaten at her, twisted her already warped view of her brother into something monstrous. She'd convinced herself Marcus was evil, that he'd stolen her grandfather too, because the alternative, that she was a child murderer, was too horrible to face. I never told Marcus about that letter. Some truths are too heavy for even the strongest shoulders. 1 year after Harold's death, on a cold December night, Marcus held a memorial service. Not for his parents, but for the family that could have been. He invited everyone who'd ever shown him kindness: the Kowalski's relatives, his coworkers, the social workers who'd tried to help him, even me. He stood in the Episcopal Church, the one his family had never attended, and spoke about forgiveness. "I forgive them," he said. "Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I forgive the parents who couldn't love me, the sister who was taught to hate me, the system that failed me. I forgive and I let go." After the service, we went to Eugene's grave. Marcus had bought the plot next to it, not for himself, but to install a bench. The plaque read, "For all the lost children looking for home." As we stood there in the snow, Marcus told me something that explained so much. "You know what Eugene told me before he died, Mrs. Mel? He said the poison in our family started long before I was born. Harold's father had done the same to him, favored one child, despised another. My grandmother had done it to her children. Back and back, generations of choosing one child to love and one to break." He looked at Madison's children's names carved into the bench's arm. "It stops with me. Even if I can't raise them, even if they're scattered to the wind, they'll know someone in their bloodline chose love over legacy." 5 years have passed since that memorial service. Let me tell you what's become of everyone, because Lord knows, this story needed some kind of ending, even if it's not the fairy tale we'd hoped for. Madison never left the psychiatric facility. She's what they call a permanent resident now. The diagnosis kept changing: schizophrenia, severe bipolar disorder, trauma-induced psychosis. Truth is, I think she simply broke under the weight of 28 years of lies. I visit her sometimes. She doesn't always know who I am. Some days she thinks I'm her mother. Some days she thinks I'm Mackenzie, the imaginary sister she was promised. On her good days, she knows I'm Mrs. Mel, and she asks about Marcus. Is he happy? She whispers, like she's afraid of the answer. He's content, I tell her. He's doing good in the world. She nods and goes back to coloring. They have her on so many medications she moves like she's underwater. It's heartbreaking, but it's better than the alternative. The last time they tried reducing her meds, she tried to claw her own eyes out, screaming that she couldn't stand seeing Marcus's face in the mirror anymore. Of all the plot twists in this saga, Trevor's might be the most surprising. That angry 14-year-old who hit his uncle with a bottle? He's 19 now, and you wouldn't recognize him. The group home he was placed in specialized in trauma recovery. For the first time in his life, Trevor had adults who didn't lie to him, didn't pit him against others, didn't feed him poison disguised as love. It was rocky, Lord, was it rocky? He ran away 3 times, got arrested twice more, nearly killed himself once. But something Eugene had said to Marcus all those years ago must run in the blood. Every person has potential. Sometimes it just takes the right soil for it to grow. Trevor's soil came in the form of Mr. David Chin, a counselor who'd grown up in the system himself. He saw through Trevor's anger to the hurt child underneath. Slowly, painfully, they unpacked the lies Trevor had been fed his whole life. The breakthrough came when Trevor was 17. Marcus had never stopped visiting, despite everything. One day, Trevor finally asked the question that had been eating at him. Why do you keep coming? After what I did. Marcus's answer was simple. Because someone should have kept coming for me. That broke something open in Trevor. He cried for 3 hours straight. For the uncle he'd been taught to hate. For the father who'd taught him wrong. For the life they all could have had if things had been different. Today, Trevor works at Marcus's youth shelter. He's studying social work at the community college. Wants to be like Mr. Chen. He's got his mother's eyes, but Eugene's heart. It just took a while to find it. Madison's other 3 children, Tyler, now 14, Hannah, 11, and little Amy, 9, had different journeys. The foster system, for all its flaws, sometimes gets it right. Tyler was adopted by his foster family, the Washingtons. They're good people, teachers, both of them. They kept Marcus in Tyler's life, understood that biology matters even when it's complicated. Tyler plays basketball now, tall like his uncle. He's got a gentle way about him, like he's determined to be nothing like the men who came before. Hannah ended up with a family 2 towns over, the Gwynns. They have 3 biological children and 2 other adopted kids. Hannah thrived in the chaos of a big family. Turned out all she needed was to not be the forgotten middle child. She writes poetry now, wins contests. Sent Marcus a poem last Christmas that made him cry. Blood is just water until someone decides to make it thick with love or thin with lies, Amy. Oh, Amy was the lucky one. She was adopted by Dr. Sarah Martinez, a pediatrician who'd never married, never had kids, but had a heart big enough for a dozen. Amy doesn't remember much about her early life, which is a blessing. She knows Marcus as Uncle Marcus, who brings her books and takes her to science museums. She wants to be a doctor like her mom, wants to help kids who hurt. Marcus sees them all regularly. Set up college funds for each of them with the Kowalski money. Goes to every basketball game, every poetry reading, every science fair. He's the uncle he never had, the family Eugene showed him how to be. Marcus kept the Kowalski bakery running, but he transformed it. What was once just a neighborhood bakery became a second-chance employment program. He hired kids aging out of foster care, adults getting back on their feet, anyone who needed a chance and was willing to work. The back room where he once slept? It's now a break room with beds for anyone who needs a safe place for the night. No questions asked, just like the Kowalskis had done for him. The walls are covered with photos, success stories of kids who started kneading dough and ended up kneading their lives into something better. Mrs. Kowalski, before she joined her husband, spent her last days teaching the kids her secret recipes. Marcus was our miracle, she told them. Now you're his miracles. Don't waste it. The bakery's famous now. People come from 3 towns over for their pierogi and purpose. There's talk of opening a second location, maybe a third. Marcus jokes that he's building an empire of second chances, one dinner roll at a time. Marcus still lives in the house on Oak Street, but it's different now. He married Jasmine 3 years ago, a sweet girl who works as a counselor at the hospital. She understands broken families, understands the weight Marcus carries. They fostered kids for a while, gave them stability between placements. Last year, they adopted twin boys. Yeah, you heard that right. Twins. The social worker called it cosmic irony, but Marcus called it completing the circle. The boys are 6 now, Landon and Lucas. Different as night and day, but loved exactly the same. I watch them sometimes from my porch. Yes, I moved to Oak Street. The old neighborhood held too many ghosts. Marcus plays with them in the yard, and there's no favoritism, no golden child, no scapegoat. Just 2 boys with a father who knows the cost of conditional love. Jasmine told me once that Marcus was terrified when they first brought the twins home. Sat up all night watching them sleep, making lists of how to make sure they both felt valued. She found him crying in the nursery at 3 a.m., promising those babies they'd never know what a tent in the backyard felt like. Last month, something happened that brought this whole story full circle. The city was tearing down what remained of the old Thompson house, the one Madison burned. It had been condemned for years, an eyesore and a hazard. In the basement, they found a box. Water damaged but intact. Inside were Eugene's real will, not the one Harold had presented after his death, but the real one, dated just days before Eugene died. He'd left everything to Marcus, just as Madison had feared. But more than that, he'd left letters. Letters to Marcus for every birthday until he turned 25. Letters full of love and encouragement, advice about cars and life, and how to be a good man. Letters Harold had hidden, probably planning to destroy them, but forgetting in his drunken haze. Marcus read them all in one night. Each one started the same way, to my real grandson, the one I chose. The last letter, for his 25th birthday, ended with this: "If you're reading this, it means you survived them. It means you became the man I knew you could be. I'm proud of you, son. I was proud of you the day you were born, and I'll be proud of you until the stars burn out. You were never a mistake, never second best, never an obligation. You were my choice, my joy, my legacy. Live well. Love freely. Break the chain." Marcus framed that letter. It hangs in the bakery now, where all the lost kids can see it. A reminder that someone, somewhere, chooses them too. 2 weeks ago, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, I was watering my roses when a car I didn't recognize pulled up to Marcus's house. An elderly woman got out, well-dressed, nervous, clutching a folder like her life depended on it. I'm not proud of it, but I absolutely eavesdropped when Marcus answered the door. "You don't know me," she said, "but I'm Harold's sister. Your aunt, Patricia." Turns out, Harold had cut off his entire family when he married Linda. Patricia had been searching for them for years, had hired a private investigator when she heard about Harold's death. She'd come with photos, family history, and a truth that shook even unshakable Marcus. Harold had been the scapegoat in his family too. Their father had tormented Harold while doting on Patricia. Harold had sworn he'd never do that to his kids, had left home at 18 vowing to break the cycle. He became exactly what he hated, Patricia said, tears running down her face. "I've read the police reports, talked to neighbors. He did to you what our father did to him, only worse. I'm so sorry." She'd brought photos of Harold as a boy, thin, scared, standing apart from the family while Patricia got the attention. The parallels were eerie. In one photo, young Harold stood outside in the snow while the family celebrated Patricia's birthday inside. You could see his face pressed against the window, watching. "The cycle goes back generations in our family," Patricia explained. "My grandmother did it, her mother before her. Always picking one child to love and one to break. I broke it by never having children. Harold." Harold tried and failed spectacularly. She left Marcus with the family history and her phone number. Said she understood if he never wanted to see her again, but she'd needed him to know he wasn't alone, wasn't the first to survive this family curse. Marcus called her last week. They're having coffee next month. Baby steps, but steps nonetheless. Yesterday, and this is why I'm telling you this whole story now, yesterday something happened that made me think maybe, just maybe, there's hope for healing even in the deepest wounds. Madison had what the doctors called a moment of clarity. It happens sometimes with her condition. For about an hour, the fog lifts and she's present, really present. She asked to see Marcus. He went, of course. Took me with him for support and probably to witness in case things went south. Madison was sitting in the day room, looking out at the garden. When she saw Marcus, she didn't scream or accuse or demand. She just looked at him with clear eyes for the first time in years. "I killed him," she said quietly. "Eugene, I poisoned him because he loved you." Marcus already knew. I'd finally told him about the letters a year ago. But hearing it from Madison was different. "I know," he said simply. "I was 8, she continued. "They told me you stole my sister. Told me I should have had a twin who looked like me, thought like me, completed me. Every day I looked at you and saw a thief. But you were just a baby. We were both just babies." She reached out and touched his hand. First time she'd touched him without violence in over a decade. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry for all of it. For the tent. For teaching my kids to hate you. For becoming the monster they created. I'm sorry I couldn't see you were drowning too." Marcus held her hand while she cried. Didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. Didn't offer forgiveness. That's a journey, not a moment. Just held her hand while she grieved the brother she'd never let herself have. "Tell my kids," she said as the clarity started to fade, "tell them their mother loved them. That she's sick, not evil. That Uncle Marcus is the best of us." By the time we left, she was back to coloring, humming that same lullaby. But something had shifted. A door had opened, even if just a crack. Next week, Marcus and Madison turned 35. For the first time since they were 16, they'll mark it together, in a way. Marcus is bringing a cake to the facility. Nothing fancy, just a simple cake from the bakery. He's also bringing photo albums, pictures of her kids growing up, succeeding despite everything. Pictures of the life that continues outside her window. Not to hurt her, but to show her that her children survived her the way they both survived their parents. Trevor's coming too. He wants to tell his mother he forgives her, that he's breaking the cycle she couldn't. The other kids aren't ready yet, may never be. But Trevor's ready to try. "She's still my mom," he told Marcus. "Sick or not, she's my mom. And if I've learned anything from you, it's that sometimes loving someone means showing up even when they don't deserve it." You know, sitting here on my porch, watching Marcus play with his twins while the evening sun sets over Oak Street, I think about how different this all could have been. One choice, just one different choice at any point, and maybe Harold doesn't drink himself to death planning murder. Maybe Madison doesn't burn down a house trying to burn down memories. Maybe those 4 kids don't scatter to the wind. But then I think about Trevor becoming a social worker to save kids like himself. About Amy wanting to be a doctor, Hannah writing poems that heal hearts, Tyler gentle as a giant. About a bakery full of second chances and a man who chose grace over grudge. The Thompsons thought they were raising a golden child and discarding a spare. Instead, they created a monster and a saint, and in the end, the monster devoured itself while the saint built a kingdom of kindness. Is it worth it? All that pain for this redemption? Ask me again in another 20 years, when Marcus's twins are grown, when Madison's kids have kids of their own who know nothing but love. Ask me when the cycle is so broken it's just dust, and Eugene's legacy of chosen love has outlasted Harold's legacy of hate. For now, I'll just say this. Marcus Thompson slept in a tent at 16 and now houses the homeless. His sister slept in a princess bed and now colors in a psychiatric ward. His parents had everything they needed, 2 healthy children, a father who loved them, a roof over their heads, and they burned it all for a lie they told themselves about what family should look like. And Marcus? Marcus had nothing but the love of a grandfather who chose him and the kindness of strangers who saw his worth. And with that, he built an empire of empathy, a legacy of love, a family bound not by blood, but by the choice to show up, again and again, until showing up is all that's left. Some nights, when I can't sleep, I still think about that 16-year-old boy in a tent, knocking on a door that wouldn't open. But now I also think about the man he became, opening every door he finds, making sure no child spends another night in the cold. That's karma, honey. Not the violent kind that crashes cars into barriers, but the quiet kind that builds bakeries and breaks cycles. The kind that turns poison into medicine, one choice at a time. Harold Thompson died trying to destroy the son he never wanted. But Marcus Thompson lives, saving the children nobody wants. And in the end, that's the only revenge that matters. Living well, loving freely, and proving that the best families are the ones we choose to build. Even if we have to start in a tent to find them.